Mike Carlson is with us. Mike, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. Yeah, well, big day yesterday with the first match in London. Trying to see a match live in London and then catch up with the rest of the league by the end of the night makes you pretty bleary.
I'm sure. We can talk about the London game in a moment because it was a really fascinating end to it. But I do want to talk about Tua and the situation that happened. I think everybody has seen the video at this stage of his second injury, and in the aftermath of that, the NFLPA, the Players Association, have sacked the independent neurological consultant whose job it was to preside over whether or not Tua was fit to play. I mean, you know, in one respect, fair play. They've taken swift action. In another, it feels a little bit like they're trying to appoint a scapegoat in this whole thing. What's your instinct about what's going on here, Mike?
I agree with you on the latter. It isn't his decision. They call him an unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant. Every team has one, but the final decision is the team doctors, the James Woods character from any given Sunday. And still, our overwhelming suspicion is that their priority is to get the player to play. And of course, the player wants to play. This is what, you have to remember. So if you left it to the players, they would come, back on immediately. Your bell is rung, your head clears up, and then you think you're okay to go. But what we're protecting them against is the long-term effects of concussion and all. And the problem went back to his first hit the week before, where he got pushed to the ground very hard. His head went off the ground. He immediately grabbed his head and shook it to try to shake it, to try to clear it. He got up, he went about 3 steps, and then he collapsed down to the ground. And they took him for evaluation. The consultant said he was okay, presumably. We don't know what he said, but then the doctor gave him the clearance to come back. He came back and played the rest of the game, saying that, and the team said that he had a back injury, basically, not a head injury. So this meant he was okay to go on the Thursday night game. Remember, they played on Sunday, then they played on Thursday. And the hit that you're talking about at the beginning was not a particularly hard one. The guy who sacked him was literally sitting down on the turf and pulled him down over his own legs so that his head wound up bouncing off the turf. And he was out, and we knew it. Now, there's a couple of things going on here. They have a no-go in the protocols. And as you said, the Players Association has sacked the consultant. They or the league have the right to do that. They have to approve each one that is hired by the teams. But there are no-go rules about concussion. So if a player shows what they call gross motion instability, which is what Tua showed in the first game, when he's wobbling around and all, that's kind of an automatic, you don't play the rest of the game. And for him to come back was basically unconscionable. And I keep going back to a couple of other points that the Players Association and the league agree on. All of our stadia, almost all of them now, have artificial turf, which means it's a surface laid basically over concrete. So your head is bouncing off concrete, not off of grass. And, we have a lot of players who want to play on grass because you have fewer unforced leg injuries as well, because you get better support on your feet. So I think we have to start rethinking the whole artificial turf thing, which is a money issue because it's cheaper to run in the long term than grass. The referees are basically letting players play in what used to be called in the grasp. In other words, when a quarterback is being held by a player, but he isn't down yet, they're letting that go because we have so many good running quarterbacks, exciting guys, and a number also who are big and can absorb hits and still get rid of the ball. So they're letting them have it. The longer they stay in someone's grasp, the more danger they are in of being hurt. And that's something that has to be addressed. And then finally, it's the independent so-called consultant. It's the doctor. It's the coaches. It's the management. I mean, everybody wants to get him back on the field because he's the star of the show. And we don't want the star of the show. At some point, they have to take responsibility. And there's still, Mike McDaniel is still talking about how, we thought everything was good. Tua was fine. And any player will tell you that he wants to play. he will go back out if if his head is clear, and he thinks sometimes if his head isn't clear and he doesn't know the difference. But someone has to protect the players from the long-term effects of concussion damage, so it's no good when what's Tua, 24, when he's 54, if all of a sudden he can't remember what his children's names are, it's
yeah, Mike, I mean, I think this issue in rugby is going to be absolutely enormous. I think there are some kind of echoes with the out half, the modern out half, and the quarterback. You see, the modern quarterback, a lot of them run, so they're going to take hits. But for me, everyone watching that with any kind of knowledge of concussion would have told you he cannot come back on the pitch. Once you see that, like, jittery on his feet, the wobble after he shook his head, how can a coaching staff, how can all of those individuals involved, and even the players, how can they let this happen? Because it cannot happen anymore. Now we have a scapegoat, but there are people in that room. Evil happens when good men and women stay silent. This should never have happened. And then you get what happened on Thursday.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. It was obvious. It was obvious to everybody, and all I can say is that you are caught up in the business of winning the game, and that becomes your priority. And if you're the coach, if you're Mike McDaniel, the doc comes out and says he's fine, he's got a back injury. You don't go back and
but you
think,
saw it. You were the coach. You're not in the business of winning a football game. You're in the business of your player not having dementia when he's 40.
Well,
do you know what I mean?
Which is what I've been saying. But I sort of see how what it does. It allows the coach not to have to make a decision.
Yeah.
And he can stay back and
wipe his hands.
Yeah, wipe his hands. It's not my decision. The doctors say he's okay. How do you feel, Tua? Tua, of course, says I'm good to go, and so he goes in there. And the correlation between the first injury and the second injury is so obvious that they have to do something now. So the NFL and the Players Association are going to do an investigation of changing the protocol or something like that. And that begs the point. The protocol, if it was applied correctly, would have worked for Tua, and that's basically the point. It's kind of like you need to go around and slap everybody in the face and say, look, let's take this seriously instead of just paying lip service.
Yeah, it's hard to know where this ends, really. I don't know, do they start?
Well, we had two quarterbacks concussed this weekend. I haven't seen the Tyrod Taylor one. He came in for Daniel Jones and the Giants after Jones injured his ankle. And when he went off, Jones had to come back in and play on a bad ankle. I did see Brian Hoyer with the Patriots, and it didn't look like, it didn't look like a massive shot or anything like that. But he got up, he was hit, he got up, and they took him in immediately and kept him out for the game. And I suspect part of that was people were being extra cautious because of Tua, but hopefully, and I say hopefully, but you don't know, that attitude will carry on for the rest of the season, and you'd rather, I don't know. I could, I've been involved in this one way or another almost all my life. I'd much rather err on the side of caution in this. If I were a huge fan, I would want to err on the side of caution.
Some historical context, Mike. Like, what are the not necessarily hard figures, but the NFL has had a serious problem with a lot of these players having serious mental health issues post games because of the hits they've gotten, and this is why this seems just like from another era almost that this could still go on.
Yeah, you would think we were past that because the evidence is there. It's one of the problems and the bigger issue is that although the big hits like the one on Tua, it actually wasn't that big a hit. It was the head bouncing off the turf in both cases that caused. But CTE and concussion damage is a kind of collective thing. It's the accumulation of lots of hits that do the most damage, which is why when a guy is concussed, you don't put him back on the field 4 days later because the second one is that much worse than the first. But for a lot of players, linemen in particular, you never see one big shot that sends them off reeling, but a whole career of heads banging on every single play.
That's why rugby terrifies me going forward, Ger. Terrifies me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that there isn't more scrum. What we see in rugby. I mean, the scrums are something that should be, but what we see in rugby is all the taking out of players. When you're in the ruck.
Yeah, I think it's a good point as well that Mike makes, that the headline stuff that we saw on Thursday and that's what gets people talking. It's the stuff you don't see that's probably even more terrifying.
Yeah, and that is a real worry, for almost everybody.
I do want to just ask about the the London game, pardon me, where a double doink. A double doink goes and bounces out. I haven't seen that before. Normally the double doink bounces over, and it looked like it was for all the world about to bounce over.
Yeah, there was the strangest spin on the ball. It was literally kind of spinning parallel to the ground as it went down off the left upright, and then it hit the crossbar and went back up. And for that like one frozen instant, you didn't know which way it was going to come back down, but its momentum took it on the wrong side. Now, it was fascinating because Lutz had hit a 60-yard field goal to tie the game with about 2 minutes left, just under the 2-minute warning. And Greg Joseph had missed an extra point before that, which let the field goal tie the game. They would have been a point down even with the field goal, which would have made the finish a whole lot more interesting. But then Joseph hit I think it was 46-yard field goal to give them the lead, and then it was one play, and Lutz took the kick. So he made one from 60, he missed from 61. What's really interesting to me is that we actually almost assume now that 60-yard kicks are makeable, where 10 years ago it would have been a very unusual occurrence to even try it, But it wasn't a great game, but it was a fascinating one. I mean, it kept competitive throughout, and of course it was a great finish.
Yeah, Mike, we got to leave it there. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Sure, anytime, sure.
It's Mike Carlson.